Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. Once again, this is episode number 250, which was published on Thursday, the 7th of October, 2021. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and a few bits of housekeeping just before we begin. Well, in fact, one bit of housekeeping. In a week, just over a week, so let's get the dates right, it's the 18th of October, 2021. We will be launching the Page Builder Summit 3.0. We have got absolutely tons in store. We've got 40 odd speakers and sessions going on. We've got our Facebook group. We've got prizes. It's all to do with WordPress and page builders, which includes the Gutenberg block editor as well. Loads of stuff going on, and you can find out all about it at pagebuildersummit.com. If you go there, you'll see a pink button, and that pink button will enable you to get signed up so that you can attend all the events, and we'll keep you posted as things are happening. It's completely free to attend. There is an upsell offer if you'd like to avail yourself of that. That enables you to get all of the content forever and all of the speaker bonuses and things as well. It's a really good deal, and I would recommend it, but it's up to you. You can just watch live on the day if you prefer to do it that way. Once more, pagebuildersummit.com. It goes from Monday, the 18th of October, all the way through till Friday. And there's a schedule page where you can look at everything. That's pagebuildersummit.com/schedule. It is being updated from time to time as we get some new information, but most of the stuff that you need is there. Okay, the normal stuff though, wpbuilds.com/subscribe to keep in touch with everything that we do. And barring that, let's move on to today's subject. Today, I'm talking with a lovely chap called Justin Clem, and we're talking all about a tool that I confess I had not heard of called Ghost Inspector. Justin reached out to me after listening to a podcast episode of ours. It was H is for Health, where we talked about all of the things that you might need to do to keep your website healthy. And he said, well, there's something that you've missed, and it's our tool called Ghost Inspector. Ghost Inspector allows you to do all of the things that you might wish to do to test whether your website is actually working. So, for example, you can set up automations. This is a really nice thing. You can use their Chrome extension to set up some automations. You can fill out forms and make sure that forms are being submitted. You can do the usual capturing of screenshots to make sure your website is up. And I have to say, it's an impressive suite of software. It's not something I've ever dwelt on in the past particularly, but obviously if you've got a really high profile site and you need to make sure that everything is working, including pages loading, forms being filled out correctly and so on, then Ghost Inspector might well be the tool for you. So here's the podcast. I hope that you enjoy it. I am with Justin Clem on the podcast today. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Nathan.
We have quite an unusual story of how we met. We've just been discussing it offline just a moment ago, because it feels like we mentioned your product, which is called Ghost Inspector, a little while ago on a podcast episode. And do you want to just tell us how we ended up colliding on the podcast today?
Yeah, that's right. It was kind of a fun situation. You had recorded a podcast a while back that was I believe H for Health, and it was talking about different tools you can use to monitor your WordPress sites. And the company I work for, Ghost Inspector, came up. We're an automated browser testing tool, and someone mentioned that you could use it to test a contact form, and it was great. And then there was a conversation around, it was like, but you know what would be really cool if you could submit that form, and then you could actually check and make sure the email got delivered. And I don't think there was a good solution on that podcast. But one of our users heard it and commented on Twitter and was like, hey, Ghost Inspector actually has this email testing feature too. So you can actually do that in some situations. And that looped me in and caught my interest, and we got in touch and thought it'd be fun to hop on a podcast and talk about Ghost Inspector and maybe touch on that email testing topic.
Okay, that sounds really good. We've already mentioned the name of the product. It is Ghost Inspector. Probably good idea, I often mention things like this, is just to pause the podcast now, go to ghostinspector.com. It's spelled exactly as you would imagine, ghostinspector.com. Familiarize yourself with it, and then pop back in and press play again. If not, you're in for the ride, and you'll go through it as we go through it. I have to say, Justin, this is not an area where have a particular expertise, so I'm going to ask some fairly dumb questions, and you'll just have to pull me out of the mire and drag me through it. But you've already sort of touched on basically what the software does, but maybe you've got like some sort of elevator pitch that you can throw at us for just under a minute. What is Ghost Inspector? What's the point of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ghost Inspector is an automated testing service, and we're designed to be very approachable so that folks who host websites or manage websites can create automated tests that interact with their website the same way a user would. So you can imagine testing things like adding an item to the shopping cart, or logging in, logging out, submitting contact forms, the types of actions that a user would carry out and expect to work on your website. What you can do is use Ghost Inspector to record or recreate those actions and turn it into a reproducible test. And that's stored on our service, and we give you options for running those tests, so you can schedule them, or you can run them post-deployment, or you can run them on demand. And what we do is launch a browser and carry out those same actions in an automated way, adding the item to your shopping cart, submitting your form, and capture that as a test result. So we give you video and screenshot comparison. We can check some emails in situations. We can do accessibility testing, a whole slew of features that you might want to test on your website. And so when things go wrong, if suddenly your WooCommerce plugin has broken and an item can't be added to the shopping cart, Ghost Inspector is going to catch that, and it can notify you via email or Slack or other methods, and tell you, hey, there's a problem with your website, and give you a result showing you what happened.
Okay, great. Really nice summation there. So the website, ghostinspector.com, one of the sort of UVPs at the top is simple codeless test automation. Getting started with automated browser testing can be difficult and requires integrating many tools together. Not with Ghost Inspector. Now anyone can test. And really, my question is around the idea that anyone can test, and curious about who your current client base is. Maybe you don't have these metrics, but I'm interested to know if it's just kind of end users, people that are using WordPress, and maybe they've got their own independent site and they don't really know a lot about WordPress, so they're curious to see if their site's up and performing as it should, or whether you've maybe got a bit more of a balance, maybe swinging more to the agency side and the freelancer side, professionals who are building multiple WordPress websites each year.
Sure. So we have a pretty broad range of customers. We do see a lot of WordPress users. In fact, we have a WordPress plugin I can talk about a little later on, but often agencies, but we do see those individual WordPress developers in there sometimes using our service. Obviously, we're oriented a little more B2B. So in cases where you have maybe a personal WordPress website, our solution may be a little too aggressive for your needs, but we see a range, and oftentimes we see agencies who are building WordPress sites for their clients, and then continue to monitor those sites and make sure that they're online and working. What's nice about Ghost Inspector is you don't have to buy a Ghost Inspector account like per website. So we'll have agencies who might have 10, 15, 20, 100 websites built. They just have one account with us, and they're managing the tests, and they're making sure that the website looks the way it's supposed to look, and acts the way it's supposed to act.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. We'll come on to the pricing and all of that, and how the tiers all work, maybe towards the end. But so probably it's going to fit better with our audience, I would imagine, because I think most people listening to this, their life is in some way professionally connected with WordPress. That's not always going to be the case, but I think a lot of the people listening to this are doing WordPress websites multiple each year, perhaps working for an agency or freelancing and building up their own agency. So this is right in that wheelhouse. I'm just curious as to whether or not there's a particular type of website. Is there a point where actually Ghost Inspector is not suitable for you because your website is just too straightforward? So you mentioned mom and pop stores. Let's say, for example, that I've got a simple website, 3 or 4 pages. It's just a brochure thing. There's a contact form at best, but that's about it. It's 3 or 4 pages of information about something that I'm interested in on the internet. Is it suitable for that, or are we sort of stretching the benefit of Ghost Inspector at that point?
Yeah, so I think in those cases, it's really up to the person managing the website. And in some ways, I think of Ghost Inspector as kind of an insurance policy. So maybe it's like, how important is it that this contact form is working all the time? But there's certainly there's a broad range of tools available to help you with monitoring your website, and starting with things that are very simple and often like very reasonably priced, kind of like an uptime monitoring tool that's essentially just hitting your URL and it's like, do I get a 200 status response? Like, is it reachable? Or maybe it searches for like a string, maybe your Google Analytics string in the content, something really simple. And then you can kind of take a step up, and there's services that might take like a screenshot of your website each day and compare it. That might be like a little more expensive, but still, on the cheaper side. And you can kind of go up from there. With Ghost Inspector, you get a pretty comprehensive set of features. So we do screenshot comparison. And what's nice is if your style sheet breaks, or maybe your theme like updated itself and now something's off, it can flag that. You have the contact form testing. We do accessibility checks. So if that's a concern for you, and some websites have pretty strict requirements about being accessible, meaning are able to be used by folks with disabilities, we can check for those kinds of things. So I think it's ultimately your call of like, what are the things you're looking to confirm on your website that are working? How regularly do you want to do that? If it's kind of like a casual website, I'm sure you can get by with even some free solutions, kind of just making sure the bare minimum is met. If you really want to tick all those boxes and make sure all the things are working and, you're responsive, we do different screen sizes. So, is the responsive version working on an iPhone? Is the tablet size, rendering properly? You really want to tick all those boxes, then Ghost Inspector can be a good option for you.
Yeah, it kind of feels as if you're more into the interactive side of things. I could be misrepresenting Ghost Inspector, but it feels like your pitch is firmly in the, look, we do a lot more than just taking a screenshot and checking if your style sheet's available and things like that. This is, at the higher end, you've got a product where you can tell it, here's a set of instructions, follow these instructions, and if these instructions are not fulfilled and we don't get the expected output returned, then do something about that. So the complexity is really where the joy is here.
That's correct. Yeah, we definitely, that's really the meat and potatoes, is that we can open a browser, not just check, did this load? We're able to fill things out, submit forms, log in. And so that opens up a pretty big doorway of possibilities in terms of testing things. So
okay.
That's really where it's going to shine.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to the question. I'm not sure in which order to do this. How does it actually behave in the UI? How do you do it? Or what can it test? I think I'll go for what can it test first. So this may be a massive, great long list of things that it can test. It might only be 5 or 6 things, but whatever you feel are the most important things to get out. What kind of things are up on the table? What could I test for that a typical WordPress user might be interested in?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny question, because this is something we touch on with new users a lot, because it's overwhelming a little bit, like what can you test?
Yeah.
Because you can almost carry out any operation a user would. And so what we try to tell our new customers when we onboard them is really try to think about like the 10 most important things that like really matter on your website. Like, what are the things that must be working, right? Like if you're selling things, a user must be able to add something to their shopping cart. Ideally, you could test that they can actually check out and buy something. If your users, log into your website, you'd want to make sure that they can log in, maybe that they can update their profile, maybe that they can change their password. If you have a contact form, you probably want to make sure that contact form is submitting. So you really kind of want to pin down like what are the core things that I want to make sure 100% of the time are working, and then once you build tests around those, and have good coverage for those things, then you can start to get a little crazier and test some of the subtler things or more complex things. But it's important to really start with the most important features of your website, because if you kind of go nuts with it and you suddenly, it's day 3 and you've got 400 tests that are testing all these edge cases, it can become a bit unwieldy. And as you mentioned, this is a fairly complicated thing. You're performing, actions in an interactive way. And so this can kind of spiral out of control if you try to test like all the things all the time. So in most cases, I hesitate to say almost everything is testable. It kind of is, but it's more about like what's most important to me. What are the things that I need working for my website to be like operational?
I've got some curious edge cases that have just come into mind. So, for example, I imagine that you can position the mouse in a certain point and interact with the form field and fill that form field out with a pre-required set of data and click a submit button and see what that brings back and so on. So really weird things like can it hear audio? In my case, I'm a podcaster. If the audio is not coming out the other end, in other words, if the audio file isn't missing, that's a catastrophe for me. And I might be a YouTuber, and I might have a blank space on my website where the latest YouTube video should be going. So I know they're really weird, and apologies for just suddenly putting you on the spot, but can it do quirky things like that?
That's an excellent question. So at the moment, it can't actually do audio. And one of the challenges we've had there is that because the tests run on Amazon servers, those servers don't actually have like audio capabilities.
That's interesting. Okay.
So we do have a little bit of work we're doing. What's kind of neat is as this field's gotten popular over the past couple of years, the browsers themselves have been adding more features to support automation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one that we're working on adding where when you tell Chrome like, okay, you can listen to my mic or you can see my video camera. There's now a way when you're running Chrome in an automation mode to provide like an actual video file or an audio file. So even though you're not on the automated test, there's no mic, you're able to pass that into Chrome and say like, here's the audio file that the mic would be providing, or here's the video that the video would be providing. Right. So there's a little bit of tooling around that. It's still kind of developing. That's actually, that's a great call. Some of the audio and video inputs and things that are kind of dealing with external inputs to your computer are still a bit challenging at this point.
Yeah, apologies for giving you the most edge of edge cases, but I was just curious just because of what I'm doing here with the podcast, and I'm always fascinated when I look in the tab at the permissions that I'm giving. I remember a couple of years ago that it was like 2 or 3 permissions, and now the list is literally like 20 permissions, and I guess you can field those things, but most people are not going to be doing that. So it's going to be filling out forms, it's going to be visiting pages, it's going to be checking uptime and so on, and making sure that the desired thing is actually working. So that brings me to the question, how do you actually do it? So let's assume that we've paid our subscription, we've signed in, we've figured out how to get to the point where we actually start making a test, and we hit the make a test button or whatever that says. How does it work? How do we actually interact with Ghost Inspector to set up the tests and put the steps in place and tell it what the desired outcomes are?
Sure. Yeah. So the easiest approach that we offer is a browser extension, and that's available in Chrome and Firefox. And it's free. You install it, and once you launch it, you actually sign into your account in that extension. And it has a really simple interface for basically recording yourself performing actions in your own browser. So if I wanted to create a test that opened up my website and added an item to the shopping cart, and then navigated to the shopping cart and made sure that it was there, maybe confirm the price, something of that effect, I'd open up my website, I'd click on our little toolbar icon, it's a little ghost, and I just hit start recording, and it gives an indicator showing it's capturing what you're doing. And what the extension will do at that point is it'll actually watch the things you're doing on the page. So when you open your website, it'll record that. When you click on the item, it'll record that. When you add it to the cart, so on and so forth. Maybe if you adjust the quantity, so you change the 1 to a 2, it'll record all of those actions. And when you get to the point where you're done with your test, you click the toolbar icon again, you just say stop recording, and you give your test a name, and there's a few other options there, and you save it. And it kind of packages up those actions that it recorded, and it sends it off to your Ghost Inspector account. And then what we do is take those steps, and right off the bat, we launch a browser on our side, and we walk through those same exact steps. And it's fairly quick. If your test is 10, 15, 20 steps, usually within 30 seconds to a minute, you're going to have your first result. and it's going to show you, here are the steps that were recorded. Here's a video. Here's a screenshot. And I should mention that the steps themselves, just to get a little more technical on how that works.
Yes, please. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, sure. So when you're looking at a website, if you've got your WordPress homepage open, you're looking at elements and images and buttons that are represented underneath by HTML code. And your browser kind of parses that into what we call the DOM, kind of like a model of here are all the elements. And there are ways to identify all of the elements. So if I click a button, there's different syntaxes I can use to identify, like, this is the add to cart button. So things like CSS classes or IDs or names, or even sometimes the text of the button itself. And we have a pretty great blog post on this on our blog, ghostinspector.com/blog, that walks through some of the different methods you can use. But what our extension does is it generates these strings, we call them targets or selectors, so that it knows, okay, when I open up the website and I need to click this button, here's the way I find that button. Here's basically the identifier using CSS or using sometimes another method called XPath, so that it can find the button it needs to click on or find the input that it needs to assign something to. And that's what the extension captures as the actual target, so that it knows what it's interacting with.
Does it? So it finds the part of the DOM that it wants to interact with, perhaps the CSS or something, or the button. Then it pre-fills it, and then it'll find the button to submit it and punch the button. Off we go and see what comes out the other end. It just raises one question for me. Do you ever fall foul of, I don't know, like firewall software that, this is all happening too quickly. This can't be real. This is some kind of automated bot crawling the site. Do you sort of slow things down a bit on your end to make sure it feels as human as possible? Yeah.
So there are, I wouldn't say there's a huge challenge around that, but there are some challenges. Timing, you've kind of hit on an important point. Timing is a really big thing in automation, because as a user, you have, not only are you slower as a user, so the time has a little more, the page has a little more time to process. You also have like an intuition. Like if you've ever added an item to the shopping cart and then you get maybe like a spinner for like 5 seconds because it's taking a while, and then so you as a user are like, okay, I know it's going, I just got to wait for it, and then it's going to be there. Automation, it doesn't know that by default. So it might click add to the cart, and then it's like, I looked for it, I don't see it after 1 second, I'm giving up. But I was very conscious of those issues when I first started building Ghost Inspector, because I was facing them. And so we've made a really strong effort over the years to build lots of logic into Ghost Inspector, to be really smart about waiting for things to load, understanding that the page is transitioning or there's a spinner up. So there's a bunch of settings, and we have some defaults that we think make sense. Like it automatically waits, I think, a quarter of a second between each interaction. And that we give you a slider so you can slow your test down or speed it up. It automatically waits for things to show up. So if you add an item to your shopping cart and it's taking 5 or 10 seconds, our automation just sits there and waits. And it's like, is it in the cart yet? Is it in the cart yet? And you can define like how long does it wait, until it gives up. So we have a number of settings to help deal with that. And then in terms of firewalls, we have a couple of methods. Like the IP addresses we use are permanent and published, so you can always like add us to your allow list.
Good to know. Yeah.
A couple of tunneling tools. There are always edge cases, like catch buzz can be a challenge, because those are sort of widgets that are designed to prevent automation.
So they're a challenge for humans, not just for robots.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're pretty challenging for everybody at this point. Those can be challenging to deal with. I mean, truthfully, we can't solve them. If we could solve them, they wouldn't really be, very, very useful, would they?
No.
Sometimes you have to find a way to disable that for your test or so on. So there's always lots of little edge cases, but we've tried to come up with different solutions for them.
Okay, so the preferred solution, I should say, is to use Chrome, use Firefox, download the extension, visit the page in question, hit the button in the extension toolbar, and then just go through a test and set it up and see how that performs, log in and see what the results are. So on the inside of the platform, that's where the results and everything are stored, and you can see all your automations as you've named them and so on. And you'll be able to get pretty much real-time information and feedback about whether these things are working. So let's say, for example, that something goes wrong, nothing too catastrophic, the hosting is still up, but there's something wrong and my checkout's now defunct. Things aren't working as possible. How do I know? What is it? What is Ghost Inspector doing to alert me to the fact that something's gone wrong? And on what level is it able to tell me? Is it reporting back this test has failed, or is it saying this test has failed at step 12, which is the checkout button, or what's the level of detail?
Sure. So the level of detail is pretty good. So if you have a test that's going to add an item to your shopping cart and then attempt to check out, let's say the problem is that something's wrong with your site now, and when you add the item to the cart and then navigate to the cart is empty, right? So that just happened on your website. In terms of Ghost Inspector catching that, part of it is going to be how you're running your test. So you can set your test to run on a schedule, and that can be very frequent. It can be like every minute. It can be like every 30 minutes. It could be, once a day. So that's kind of up to you. And that plays into a little bit, obviously, the more frequently you're running your tests, that increases your usage. So that may or may not put you into a different plan tier if you're running these very, very frequently. But let's say you're running your test every 30 minutes. And so that issue comes up on your site. Within 30 minutes, your Ghost Inspector test runs. It goes and adds the item to the shopping cart. It gets to the shopping cart screen and the item isn't there. So it's intending to check for it and click check out or something, but it's not seeing that. So your test will fail. And what it'll do, depending on how you've got your notification set up, it'll send you an email. It can send you a Slack notification. It can do like MS Teams, can do PagerDuty, a couple more technical options for notifying you. But let's say you're doing email, that's kind of the default one. You would get an email that shows up and it shows basically the initial steps happening. So like step 1, open the product page. Step 2, click add to cart. Those would be green. And when you got down to the step that made sure the item was in the cart, that would be red. It would say it was failing. You'd have a screenshot of basically the empty cart, which is a pretty good indicator that
nice.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And then if you visit the result, you could actually watch the video. So you could see it like open the page, add the item, navigate to the cart, and see that it's empty. So you do get a pretty good high level view of what happened. And generally it's pretty obvious. At least it's obvious like what the issue is. It may not be obvious like, why is that suddenly broken on your site?
Yeah.
Or is it JavaScript, or did somebody, mess something up? But in terms of like what is happening and what's the issue that users are seeing, you get a pretty clear picture of that.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's a really nice implementation. So you get to see a sort of bullet pointed list almost of green, 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 red.
Exactly.
Go from here. This is where the problem resides. Okay, that's really, really interesting. Now, right at the top of the show, you mentioned the fact that David and I had been chatting on a previous podcast, and we'd said, I wonder if there's a tool out there that can capture the reply, actually what is submitted through a contact form. And we were thinking, well, no, that couldn't work because it'd be going to my own email. But you have a solution for that. So I'm curious as to how that works. I've got my own guesses, but I'll just let you talk it through, and I'll tell you honestly at the end whether my guess was in any way accurate.
I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if you had the general idea here. So I'll talk through how this works, and then I can talk through just a couple of scenarios of how you might use it. And kind of the caveat here is that, there are kind of trade-offs with how you do this and how it might work for you, and kind of depending on your site. So I don't want to pitch this as this is always going to work and we can always test your emails. It can kind of depend on how you're going to approach it.
Good point. Yep.
So what we do is we offer an email service that's just included with our product. And basically the email domain at email.ghostinspector.com is kind of like a special domain. And any user that you email, so if I just think up a random username, let's say like wpbuilds123 at email.ghostinspector.com, and I send an email right now, like I haven't created the account, I haven't set anything up, I just send it to that username. Our service receives that, and then it makes that email available at email.ghostspectre.com/WPBuilds123 for the next hour. So it's sort of like you can think of it like a temporary mail store or a temporary webmail, where you're choosing your username and you can basically randomize it, or you can add a timestamp. You can make that username as kind of complex and private as you'd like. You send email to that email address, and then you have 1 hour to open up our email service website and view it. And the way this works is within your automated test. Let's say you open up a contact form and you submit it, and just assume for a moment that a copy of that contact form is going to your wpbuilds@email.ghostspectre.com address. You submit the form, and then within the automated test, you navigate to our email service. You can open up that email and see it. You could take a screenshot. If it's got a call to action, you could click the activate button or the reset password link. It's basically giving you a window of viewing this email that's been sent to the address.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it is not what I was thinking. So that's really interesting. I'm fascinated by that. That's cool. The other thing that I was wondering was how do you go through the complete life cycle of a product checkout? How do you get out so let's say, for example, I've got a website, I'm selling shoes. I want Ghost Inspector to buy some shoes, actually buy some shoes, but without buying some shoes, if you know what I mean. I want it to perform all the things that involve successfully purchasing and getting the emails about shoes. How does that work? Sure.
So what we generally do with checkouts, where you actually want to put through a transaction, probably all checkout systems that I'm aware of. So when I say like a checkout payment system, like talking like Stripe or Braintree or PayPal, they all basically have like a test mode, like a sandbox mode. And you will need to use that during your test. So what we don't want to do is have your Ghost Inspector test, open up your production site, add an item, put in a live credit card, process, right, buy the shoes. Because it's a security risk having your live credit card out there. The payment providers hate it because then they're just these transactions being placed and voided. It's not a good way to do it. So you can certainly you could have a test that gets all the way up to the point of purchasing and puts in like a bogus card number, and then checks that there's like an error.
Right.
But if you actually want to place the order, you need some way for your site to know, like, hey, this is a Ghost Inspector test. I need to give it like the test mode. And so what I've seen customers do, various things. You might have like a flag that you pass in, like if you're opening up your site, it might be like, there might be a question mark, test mode equals true at the end. Or you might be able to even run some JavaScript code within your Ghost Inspector test to turn test mode on. But it's basically leveraging that test mode. And then you're putting in, the 424242 number, that fake credit card number, and you're placing your order.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So essentially, there's kind of workarounds. It may not, you may not be able to fulfill the actual thing, but if test it really well before you go live, and then hopefully all things work. Just one other thing that's suddenly occurred to me is that we have this architecture in WordPress where we have themes, and most people settle on a theme fairly quickly, and you probably use that theme for a good period of time, but the theme really does dictate what the output HTML is. And so if I'd have got my let's say my website selling shoes up and running with one theme, and then I suddenly decide for reasons unknown that I wish to change the style of that theme, and I flip a switch and put a different theme on, I'm very happy with it. Is that the kind of thing which will upset Ghost Inspector, because the DOM and the CSS and all of that and the classes and IDs are probably going to change? Would I need to kind of redo my tests at that point?
Truthfully, you probably would. Yeah. There might be some overlap where, some of the sort of WordPress default classes and things are used, and maybe some of those work and some of the IDs work. But if there's kind of large scale change to your DOM where, the sort of selectors I was talking about in those steps that click the add to cart button, suddenly it's a different ID and different class, different spot in the page. Then you're likely going to have to do some rebuilding of your tests.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's par for the course. Speaking of rebuilding tests and kind of getting to grips with how the whole thing works, if I were to sign up what's the level of guidance that you offer? So, if I onboard, do you have some sort of tutorials? Do you have any kind of like any way of me setting up my first couple of tests in the most efficient way possible? Any guidance coming from the app?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to provide lots of documentation. We've got some videos. I mean, even, the goal of our product is to make this type of testing like very approachable, even if you're not experienced with it. Even if you're not familiar with the concept of like a selector or the DOM, we try to give you an on-ramp to get familiar with these things and be able to use our tool. But yeah, so docs, videos, we do webinars pretty often. And in fact, we've had a few. We have one coming up that touches on this email testing, and we have another specific WordPress webinar coming up next month or two. So again, you can check out our blog for those. And then the last element is we're really active on support. So we have a really really involved support team who will like go above and beyond. Well, if obviously with your permission, but we'll look at your tests, we'll help you adjust them, we'll help you come up with solutions. So we really want folks to have a good experience and not feel like they're getting thrown in this product like how does this work? How do I've created a test and it failed off the bat, like what do I do? We try to be there to walk along with you to give you your bearings.
Yeah. And is the support, is that based upon an email interaction or is it chat support? And do you have a particular part of the world where you're most likely to be active? In other words, if you're awake now, North America time, we're all good. But if you're in Australia, you'll just have to wait a bit longer.
That's a great question. Yeah. We use Intercom, which is kind of like I almost hesitate to call it a chat widget because I can't promise that somebody is always live to chat with you. But I'll say an async messaging widget. Yep. We also have email. Our defined hours that we like sort of guarantee someone is around are like business hours in the U.S. Pacific time. But we are a fully distributed team. We do have folks in different places. Folks are traveling. So honestly, if you're in Australia, generally you're going to have to wait a few hours, but we might surprise you sometimes and somebody will be, over in Europe or up late or whatever, and we'll get back to you. So
yeah, it's the dilemma of building a company, right? You can't suddenly go from no employees to flooding the world with employees. You gotta go where you are in reality. I think I've got a nice understanding of how the product works. As I said, go to ghostinspector.com, but now we get to the crucial, the meat and potatoes, as you described it, the pricing. You mentioned that essentially you've got this one account, you just set it up and you can use that account for as many websites or if you've got an agency, you can use it on different websites and client websites and so on. So your pricing is billed slightly differently. It's the number of tests. Caveat emptor, what we say now may not be the same in the future. That's always the case. But for now, how is the pricing and how much do you get for how many dollars?
Yeah, so our small plan starts at $99 a month. We give a discount if you purchase an annual prepay. So what we price on is primarily the number of test runs. So just to clarify, you can test on as many websites as you like, any domain names. You can have as many tests as you'd like. A test run would be when I actually trigger that test, and on our side, we launch the browser and we carry out the actions and we give you the video and the screenshot. So to kind of give a simple example, if you've got that test that checks that your shopping cart is working, and you set it to run once a day, over the course of a month, that's going to be 30 test runs, or however many days there are in the month. Our small plan comes with 10,000 test runs per month. So we feel like we give you a pretty hefty amount, and most of the time when folks kind of push up against the limit of that small plan, it's because they're scheduling tests like very frequently. Every 10 minutes they're running their test. Ultimately, probably like what dictates your pricing is just how many tests you have running and how frequently they are running. But all our plans come with all of the features. Your test results are maintained for 6 months. So your tests are there forever, but you can pop back all the way 6 months ago to see that failed, shopping cart test if you want to check on it. Each plan comes with a specific number of member slots. And they kind of scale up from there. So if you find yourself needing more test runs or more users in your organization who are going to join and manage these tests, those numbers scale up with our test plans.
Yeah. But quick bit of back of the envelope maths here. If you've got an agency with 100 websites, you can perform 3 tests a day, 3.3 recurring tests a day on each of those websites for the small plan. So $99 a month or $89 if you pay annually. That I can imagine that's probably going to be enough for most people. So that's a pretty decent pricing, I would say. Nice. But it goes up. We go up.
Yeah. I think we have agencies in that boat. So even sometimes maybe a smaller, like maybe they've got 10 clients, and in that case they could be running
33.3.
Yeah, so they could be running it hourly,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so from small we go to medium, and basically you're adding team members, so you can obviously put more people from your team into the platform, but also the limit goes up to 30,000 a month. So for double the price, you get 3 times the amount of tests. Then big jump up to 100,000 tests a month for $359. By the way, I'm reading out the annual pricing, the 10% off pricing, and then for enterprise, apparently it's free. It's just got a dash there. You just you contact us, the normal thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. That looks really good. The other thing I'm curious to know is, and I always get this, if I don't ask it, people say, why didn't you ask about the roadmap? So I'm going to ask, what's on the roadmap? What's coming that we don't have now that maybe, let's say, by the end of this year or something like that, we'll have as new shiny things?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we're most excited about that we're working on is the ability to compare screenshots like throughout your test. So what we kind of do now is you run your test, and at the end we take a screenshot. This is what the cart page looked like when you landed on it, and we compare it to the way it used to look, and we highlight differences. And it's really useful for catching style changes. Something we're working on now is within your test, at various points, you can check the visuals of your page. So you could open up the product page and be like, does the description section look the way it's supposed to look? Does the comment section look the way it's supposed to look? Now I'll add it to the cart. Does the cart look the way it's supposed to look? Now I'm on the checkout screen. Does that page look the way it's supposed to look? And each of those will basically track that area of your website. And each time your test runs, it'll look back and be like, okay, the cart looked like this yesterday. Does it still look like that, or have things changed? So it's an expansion of what we call screenshot comparison or visual testing.
Yeah, that's nice.
To let you apply that to lots of different places on your site. And that's something we see out of WordPress users quite a lot, especially agencies, because they generally want their website looking exactly the way it's supposed to look.
Okay, yeah, that's a nice feature coming up soon. So we mentioned at the top, ghostinspector.com is the URL. You could obviously go and use their intercom if you wanted to figure out things and what have you. But I'm just curious, Justin, personally, on a personal level, is there any way that people could reach out to you if they wanted to figure out things about Ghost Inspector and wanted to go straight to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter. It's just at Justin Clem. Always happy to chat about Ghost Inspector or browser automation in general. I've been at this for years and years, and lots of great tools and scripts and approaches out there. Always happy to just talk shop about this stuff.
Very nice indeed. So one more time, go and check it out, ghostinspector.com. See if it can satisfy your agency needs for getting things checked out, making sure everything's up and working and tickety-boo, as we say in the UK. And on that bombshell, I'll say thanks to Justin. Thanks for joining us today and talking to us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Thanks so much for having me.
So there we go. I hope that you enjoyed that episode. There's so much in Ghost Inspector for you to check out. Lots and lots of features, loads of capabilities that in some respects I didn't even know were possible. So if you've got a website, a high traffic website, and you really need for it to be up and active and awake and alert and make sure that everything is working as you would hope, then go and check it out, Ghost Inspector. Have a listen to the podcast and reach out to Justin Clem if you've got any questions. If you've got any questions about the podcast in general, then please feel free to contact us. Drop us a comment in the post or go to our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and leave us a message there. Just a quick reminder that the Page Builder Summit, I mentioned it at the start, it's beginning on the 18th of October 2021 and running for 5 whole days, Monday through Friday, finishing on the 22nd of October. We'd love for you to join us, and you can do that by going to pagebuildersummit.com and clicking on the pink button and filling out the very, very, very simple form. If you want to see the schedule, go to pagebuildersummit.com/schedule, and you can see all of the events and when they are happening. You can even book them into your calendar, I think. Okay, that's it. That's all we've got for you this week. I hope that you come back next week. I hope that you enjoy your week. Stay safe. Bye-bye for now. Cheesy music fading in.